The cold November wind cut through the thin fabric of 15-year-old Lily's jacket like a knife. She stood on the corner of Fifth Avenue, watching the fancy cars pull up to the Grand Rose restaurant one after another. Women in sparkling dresses stepped out onto the red carpet, their jewelry catching the light from the restaurant's golden chandeliers. Men in expensive suits laughed and chatted, their shoes probably costing more than most people earned in a month. Lily hugged her violin case closer to her chest. The case was old and battered, covered with stickers that had started peeling at the edges. Some showed music notes, others had the faded logos of concerts she had attended in what felt like another lifetime. That lifetime was only 3 months ago, but it might as well have been 3 years. Everything had changed so fast. She had been standing there for almost an hour, trying to work up the courage to approach someone. Anyone. Her stomach growled again, a hollow ache that had become her constant companion. She hadn't eaten anything since yesterday morning when a kind bakery owner had given her a day-old muffin. The smell of food drifting from the restaurant was torture. She could smell roasted meat, fresh bread, and something sweet that made her mouth water. A group of people walked past her, their laughter loud and carefree. They didn't even glance in her direction. To them, she was invisible. Just another homeless kid on the street corner, easy to ignore, easier to forget. Lily was used to it by now. People looked through her, not at her. It was like she had become a ghost in her own city. But tonight was different. Tonight she had to try. She couldn't go another day without food. Her hands were shaking, and not just from the cold. She was weak, tired. The kind of tired that sleep couldn't fix because she never really slept anymore. Just short naps on park benches or in doorways, always alert, always afraid. She took a deep breath and started walking toward the entrance. Each step felt heavier than the last. A doorman in a crisp uniform stood at the door, his white gloves pristine, his expression stern. Behind him, through the glass doors, she could see the warm glow of the restaurant interior. Tables covered in white cloth, candles flickering, people raising champagne glasses. Her heart pounded in her chest as she got closer. The doorman's eyes locked onto her, and she saw his expression change from neutral to suspicious in an instant. Before she could even open her mouth, he stepped forward, blocking her path. "Keep moving," he said, his voice flat and cold. "Please, sir," Lily managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. I can play. I have a violin. I can play something beautiful. Just for a piece of bread. That's all I'm asking for. Just one piece of bread." The doorman's face twisted into something that might have been a smile, but there was no warmth in it. "You're kidding, right? Move along before I call the police." But his voice had been loud enough that several people near the entrance heard. A woman in a red dress, diamonds dripping from her ears and neck, turned to look. Then she laughed. Not a small chuckle, but a loud, mocking laugh that made other people turn to see what was so funny. "Oh my goodness," the woman said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "Look at this. A little beggar with a violin. How quaint." She said the last word like it tasted bad in her mouth. More people gathered, drawn by the commotion. Lily felt her face burn with shame as their eyes raked over her. She knew what they saw. Dirty clothes that hung loose on her thin frame. Hair that she hadn't been able to wash properly in weeks. Shoes with holes in them that let in the cold and rain. She was everything they weren't. Everything they were grateful they'd never have to be. Can you believe this? A man in a gray suit said to his companion. The nerve of these people. There are shelters for a reason. Someone should call someone, another woman chimed in, clutching her purse tighter as if Lily might try to snatch it. This is a private event. She shouldn't even be on this sidewalk. The laughter grew louder. It surrounded her like a wall, trapping her in place. She wanted to run, to disappear, but her legs wouldn't move. She just stood there holding her violin case, feeling smaller and smaller with each passing second. A younger man, probably in his 20s, pulled out his phone and pointed it at her. "This is wild," he said to his date. "Instagram is going to love this. Please." Lily tried again, her voice cracking. "I'm not begging. I'm offering to play. I'm really good. I went to Thornwood Academy. I studied for 2 years there. I can play anything you want. Mozart, Beethoven, Vivaldi, anything, just for something to eat, please." The mention of Thornwood Academy, one of the most prestigious music schools in the state, only made them laugh harder. The idea that this homeless girl could have attended such a place was apparently hilarious to them. "Thornwood Academy," the woman in red repeated, turning to her friends. Did you hear that? She thinks she went to Thornwood. Darling, they don't let street urchins into Thornwood. The doorman had apparently decided he'd had enough entertainment. He raised his hand and made a sharp gesture. 2 security guards in black suits emerged from inside the restaurant. They were big men, the kind hired more for their intimidating presence than anything else. Escort her away from the property, the doorman instructed. If she comes back, call the police for trespassing. The security guards moved toward Lily, and finally her legs remembered how to work. She stumbled backward, nearly tripping over her own feet. The violin case slipped in her grip, and for one horrible moment she thought she might drop it. But she caught it, hugging it even tighter than before. It was the last piece of her mother she had left. The last piece of her old life. She couldn't lose it. She wouldn't survive losing it. I'm going, she said quickly. I'm going. I'm sorry. She turned and walked away as fast as she could without running. Behind her, she could still hear them laughing, their voices carrying on the wind. Her vision blurred with tears that she refused to let fall. She had learned not to cry anymore. Tears didn't help. Tears didn't fill her stomach or keep her warm or make people see her as human. She walked 3 blocks before she finally stopped in a small park that most people avoided after dark. There was a bench under a broken streetlight, and she collapsed onto it, her whole body shaking. Not just from hunger or cold anymore, but from the weight of everything. The crushing loneliness, the fear. The knowledge that tomorrow she'd have to do it all over again. She opened her violin case just to make sure the instrument was okay. The polished wood gleamed even in the dim light. Her mother had bought it for her 7th birthday, saving for 2 years to afford it. Lily ran her fingers along its smooth surface, remembering her mother's smile when she had first played a complete song without mistakes. I miss you, Mom, she whispered into the darkness. I don't know how to do this without you. The park was empty except for her. The city noise seemed distant here, muffled. She was alone, completely and utterly alone, and as she sat there on that cold bench, hugging her violin case like it was the only friend she had left in the world, she wondered how much longer she could keep going. What she didn't know was that someone had followed her from the restaurant, someone who hadn't left, someone who had seen something in her that no one else had bothered to look for, and that person was about to change everything. The footsteps were soft, almost hesitant, but Lily heard them anyway. Her head snapped up, her body tensing. Living on the streets had taught her to be alert to every sound, every movement. Danger could come from anywhere, at any time. A man stood a few feet away, his hands visible at his sides in a gesture that seemed deliberately non-threatening. He was older, maybe in his 50s, with gray streaking through his dark hair. He wore an expensive suit, but unlike the others at the restaurant, he had loosened his tie and undone the top button of his shirt. He looked tired, but his eyes were kind. I don't want any trouble, Lily said quickly, her voice shaking. She stood up, ready to run if she needed to. Her violin case pressed against her chest like a shield. Neither do I, the man said gently. He stayed where he was, not moving closer. My name is David. I was at the restaurant. I saw what happened. Lily's face burned with fresh shame. Great. Another person who had witnessed her humiliation. Another person who probably wanted to lecture her about shelters and social services like she hadn't already tried all of that. I'm sorry I bothered everyone, she said, the words bitter in her mouth. I'll stay away. I promise. That's not why I'm here. David took a careful step forward, then stopped when he saw her tense. I noticed your violin case. The stickers on it. One of them is from Thornwood Academy. Lily's grip on the case tightened. So what? So I went to Thornwood, David said. 30 years ago. That sticker, the one with the gold musical note and the Latin phrase underneath, they only gave those to students. You can't buy them. You can't fake them. For a moment, Lily just stared at him. She had forgotten about that sticker. It was old and faded, tucked between the others, barely visible unless you knew what to look for. Her music theory teacher had given it to her during her first semester, telling her she had real potential. I went there, Lily admitted quietly. For 2 years, but that was before. She couldn't finish the sentence. Before her mother died, before everything fell apart, before she became this person standing in a dark park with nowhere to go. David nodded slowly, like he understood all the words she couldn't say. Would you play something for me? Not for bread, not for money, just so I can hear. Why? Lily asked suspiciously. Why do you care? Because those people at the restaurant laughed at you without giving you a chance, David said. And because something tells me they made a big mistake. Lily hesitated. Every instinct told her not to trust anyone. Trust got you hurt. Trust got you disappointed. But there was something in David's voice that didn't sound fake. He wasn't looking at her with pity or disgust. He was looking at her like she was a person. Like she mattered. Slowly, she sat back down on the bench. Her hands trembled as she opened the violin case. The instrument lay there, nestled in worn velvet. It was the most beautiful thing she owned. The only beautiful thing she owned. She lifted it carefully, settling it under her chin. The familiar weight of it against her shoulder was comforting. When she held her violin, she wasn't homeless. She wasn't hungry or scared or alone. She was just a musician, just someone who loved music more than anything in the world. She decided to play the piece she had been practicing before everything fell apart, Winter from Vivaldi's Four Seasons. It felt appropriate somehow. The music was cold and fierce, full of harsh winds and biting frost. But there was beauty in it too. A kind of terrible, honest beauty that didn't pretend the world was anything other than what it was. The first notes rang out in the empty park, clear and pure. Lily closed her eyes and let the music take her somewhere else, somewhere warm, somewhere safe. She poured everything into those notes, all her loneliness, all her fear, all her grief for her mother and the life they used to have. The violin sang under her fingers, the melody rising and falling like a conversation with the night itself. She didn't think about technique or perfection. She just played from her heart, letting the music say all the things she couldn't put into words. The piece built to its powerful climax, her bow flying across the strings, and then softened into the gentle, melancholy ending. When she played the final note, she held it until it faded into silence. For a long moment, there was no sound except the distant traffic and the wind in the trees. Then Lily opened her eyes and looked at David. He was crying. Not loud, dramatic crying. Just tears running down his face that he didn't bother to wipe away. He stared at her like he had seen something miraculous. Something he hadn't expected to find in this dark park on this cold night. "How old are you?" he asked, his voice rough with emotion. 15. "And you've been living on the streets?" Lily nodded. There was no point in lying. "For how long?" 3 months, give or take. David shook his head slowly, like he couldn't quite believe what he was hearing. I've been in the music industry for 30 years. I've heard thousands of musicians, hundreds of concerts, and what you just played." He paused, searching for words. "That was extraordinary, not just technically. The emotion, the depth. You have a gift." Lily didn't know what to say. She carefully placed her violin back in its case, her hands still shaking. "Thank you," she whispered. "What happened?" David asked gently. "How did you end up here?" At first, Lily didn't want to answer. She had learned that telling people her story usually led nowhere. They either didn't believe her or they felt sorry for her but didn't actually help. But something about David made her want to talk. Maybe it was the way he had cried during her performance. Maybe it was how he had followed her here just to listen. Maybe she was just so tired of carrying the weight of her story alone. So she told him. She told him about her mother, who had worked 3 jobs to keep a roof over their heads and food on the table. How her mom had never complained, never made Lily feel like her music lessons were a burden, even though they barely had money for anything else. She told him about the day her mother collapsed at work, how the doctors said it was her heart, how there had been no warning signs. One day her mom was there and the next day she was just gone. She told him about the foster homes. The first one wasn't so bad, but the family moved to another state and couldn't take her with them. The second home was worse. The foster parents were only in it for the monthly check, barely feeding the kids, cramming too many of them into too little space. The third home was the one that made her run. She didn't go into details about that one. Some things were too hard to talk about. "I kept going to Thornwood even after Mom died. Lily said. I would sneak in early in the morning, practice in the empty classrooms. Music was the only thing that kept me sane. But eventually someone figured out I was homeless. They said I had lied on my enrollment forms about my address. They expelled me and took back the school violin they'd loaned me. She touched her own violin case. This one was my mom's. It's the only thing I have left of her. I'll never let it go. David listened without interrupting. He didn't check his phone. He didn't look impatient or bored. He just listened, really listened, in a way that no one had in a very long time. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he pulled out his phone and started typing. What are you doing? Lily asked nervously. Making some calls, David said. I know people, good people. We're going to figure this out. Figure what out? Everything, David said simply. Where you're going to sleep tonight, for starters. Somewhere safe. Then we're going to talk to Thornwood about getting you back in. And after that? He looked at her with determination in his eyes. After that, we're going to make sure everyone who laughed at you tonight understands exactly what they missed. Lily wanted to believe him, but hope was dangerous. Hope hurt worse than anything when it got crushed. Why would you help me? She asked. You don't even know me. David smiled, but it was a sad smile. Because a long time ago, someone helped me when I had nothing. And because what I heard tonight wasn't just music, it was magic. And the world needs to hear it. He made his first call, and Lily sat on that bench listening to him talk about emergency housing and legal guardianship and words that sounded like they came from a different universe. A universe where people helped instead of laughed, where things could actually get better. She didn't let herself hope. Not yet. But for the first time in 3 months, she felt something close to it. Something warm in her chest that wasn't quite trust, but wasn't complete despair either. Maybe, just maybe, things were about to change. David took Lily to a small diner that stayed open all night, the kind of place with cracked vinyl booths and fluorescent lights that buzzed quietly overhead. It wasn't fancy, but it was warm, and it smelled like coffee and bacon and pancakes. Lily's stomach twisted with hunger so sharp it almost hurt. Order whatever you want, David said as they slid into a booth by the window. I mean it. Whatever you want. Lily stared at the laminated menu like it was written in a foreign language. There were so many choices. When was the last time she had choices? She had spent the last 3 months eating whatever she could find. Scraps from trash cans behind restaurants, half-eaten sandwiches left on park benches, day-old pastries that kind bakery workers slipped her when their managers weren't looking. Her hands shook as she held the menu. She didn't want to seem greedy, didn't want David to think she was taking advantage. But she was so hungry, so incredibly, desperately hungry. The breakfast platter is good here, David said gently, like he could read her mind. Eggs, bacon, pancakes, hash browns, that's what I'm getting. Okay, Lily whispered. I'll have that too. When the waitress came, an older woman with tired eyes and a kind smile, David ordered for both of them. He also ordered orange juice, hot chocolate, and a side of fruit. The waitress looked at Lily with something that might have been recognition. Maybe she had seen other homeless kids come through here. Maybe she knew what it looked like when someone hadn't eaten in too long. Coming right up, honey, the waitress said to Lily, and her voice was gentle. While they waited for the food, David made more phone calls. Lily listened to him talk to lawyers, to someone at a housing organization, to people whose names she didn't catch. He spoke with authority, like someone used to getting things done. But he wasn't pushy or mean about it, he was just determined. Okay, David said after his third call. I've got you a room for tonight at a safe house for youth. It's run by a woman named Patricia. She's good people. Been doing this for 20 years. You'll have your own bed, a shower, clean clothes. Tomorrow we'll figure out something more permanent. Lily nodded, not trusting herself to speak. A bed. A real bed. She hadn't slept in a real bed since her last foster home. The food arrived, and Lily had to force herself not to grab it and shove it in her mouth. She picked up her fork with trembling hands and took a small bite of scrambled eggs. They were the most delicious thing she had ever tasted. Warm and buttery, and real. Take your time, David said. No one's going to take it away from you. But old habits were hard to break. Lily ate quickly, barely tasting the food after that first bite. Shush. He was too focused on getting it into her stomach before something happened, before someone changed their mind. Before this turned out to be a dream and she woke up cold and hungry on a park bench. David didn't comment on how fast she ate. He just quietly signaled the waitress and ordered her another plate. Lily felt tears prick her eyes but blinked them back. She wouldn't cry, not here, not now. As she started on the second plate, eating slower this time, David leaned back in the booth and looked at her thoughtfully. "Tell me about Thornwood," he said. "What made you want to study there?" Lily swallowed a bite of pancake. "My mom, she always said I had a gift. Started me on violin when I was 5. By the time I was 12, my teacher said I should audition for Thornwood. I didn't think I'd get in, but I did. Full scholarship. That's incredible. Do you know how rare that is?" Lily nodded. She knew. She had been one of only 3 students in her year to get a full ride. The other 2 came from wealthy families who donated to the school. She was the only one who actually needed the scholarship. "I loved it there," she said softly. "For the first time, I was around people who understood, who cared about music the way I did. My classmates were serious, dedicated. We'd practice for hours, competing with each other, but also pushing each other to be better." She paused, pushing hash browns around her plate. "After Mom died, I tried to keep going. I thought if I could just hold on to that one piece of my life, I could survive everything else. But they found out you were homeless." "Yeah. I was stupid. I fell asleep in a practice room one night. The janitor found me in the morning. After that, everything unraveled fast. They checked my records, discovered the address I'd given them was fake, said I'd committed fraud. They kicked me out the same day." David's jaw tightened. "That's harsh, especially for a kid who just lost her mother." "They said they had rules, that they couldn't make exceptions." Lily took a sip of her hot chocolate. It was sweet and warm, coating her throat like a hug. "I understood, kind of. They're a prestigious school. They have a reputation to protect." "That's not an excuse for abandoning a talented student in crisis," David said firmly. "Rules should have flexibility, especially when it comes to children." Lily shrugged. She had stopped being angry about it. Anger took energy and she needed all her energy just to survive. "What about your father?" David asked carefully. "Is he in the picture?" "Never met him. Mom said he left before I was born. Never paid child support, never called, never even wanted to know if she had a boy or a girl." Lily had made peace with that a long time ago. You couldn't miss someone you'd never known. "Other family?" "No, Mom was an only child. Her parents died when she was young. She grew up in foster care too." Lily smiled sadly. "She always promised me I'd have a different life, that she'd work hard enough that I'd never have to struggle like she did. She kept that promise until her heart gave out at 42, worn down by stress and exhaustion, and too many years of choosing between paying bills and going to the doctor." David was quiet for a moment, his expression heavy with thought. Then he pulled out his phone again and showed Lily the screen. It displayed a website for a major music production company. "This is my company," he said. "I produce albums, manage artists, organize concerts. I've been doing this for 30 years and I'm good at it. I'm telling you this because I want you to understand something. When I heard you play tonight, I wasn't just being nice. I wasn't feeling sorry for you. I was recognizing real, genuine, extraordinary talent." Lily stared at the phone at David's professional headshot on the website. He looked official, important, the kind of person who worked with famous musicians and traveled the world. "Why are you helping me?" she asked again. "Really, why?" David put his phone down and looked her straight in the eye. "When I was 17, I was almost where you are now. My dad drank. When he drank, he got violent. My mom finally left him, but by then we had nothing. We lived in our car for 4 months. I thought my music career was over before it started." Lily hadn't expected that. David looked so put together, so successful. It was hard to imagine him scared and struggling. "What happened?" she asked. "A teacher from my school found out. Mr. Rodriguez. He didn't have much money himself, but he let me stay in his spare room, fed me, helped me finish high school, wrote recommendation letters that got me into college. He saved my life." David's eyes were bright with emotion. "He passed away 5 years ago, told me on his deathbed that the best way to thank him was to do the same for someone else when I got the chance." And you think I'm that someone? I know you are. What you have, Lily, it's special. Maybe 1 in a million. And I'll be damned if I let the world lose that because nobody gave you a chance. He leaned forward. But I need you to understand something. I can help you, but you have to want the help. You have to be willing to trust me. At least a little bit. Can you do that? Lily thought about it. Trust was hard. Trust was dangerous. But staying on the streets was dangerous too. And slowly starving while everyone pretended not to see her was its own kind of death. I can try, she said finally. That's all I'm asking. David smiled. Now finish your food. Tomorrow's going to be a big day. We're going to Thornwood to have a conversation with the board of directors. And trust me, they're going to listen. Lily picked up her fork again, feeling something unfamiliar stirring in her chest. It took her a moment to recognize what it was. Hope. Real, actual hope. Maybe she was allowed to feel it after all. Lily woke up in a real bed for the first time in 3 months. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. The mattress was soft, the blanket was warm, and sunlight streamed through actual curtains instead of hitting her face on a park bench. She sat up quickly, her heart racing before remembering. Patricia's house. The safe place David had arranged. She was okay. She was safe. There was a knock on the door, and Patricia's kind face appeared. She was a short woman with gray hair pulled back in a bun and laugh lines around her eyes that made her seem friendly, even before she smiled. Morning, sweetheart. How'd you sleep? Good, Lily said, and it was true. She had slept deeply, without waking up every hour to make sure no one was stealing her violin or worse. Really good. There's breakfast downstairs when you're ready. And David called. He's picking you up in an hour. Patricia came into the room carrying a stack of clothes. I found some things that should fit you. Nothing fancy, but they're clean and they're yours to keep. After Patricia left, Lily took a shower. A real shower with hot water and soap and shampoo. She stood under the spray longer than necessary, feeling 3 months of dirt and fear wash down the drain. When she finally got out and looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. Clean hair, clean skin, clean clothes that actually fit. She looked like a normal teenage girl again. Downstairs, 3 other kids sat at the kitchen table eating cereal. They ranged in age from maybe 12 to 17. They glanced at Lily but didn't ask questions. In a place like this, everyone had a story, and you didn't pry unless someone wanted to share. David arrived exactly when he said he would. He smiled when he saw her. You look good. Feel better? Yeah, a lot better. Good, because today's going to be interesting. He held up his phone. Before we go to Thornwood, there's something you need to see. They sat in his car and David pulled up a video on his phone. Lily watched as the screen showed the front of the Grand Rose restaurant from the night before. She saw herself approaching the doorman, heard herself asking to play for a piece of bread. Her stomach sank as she watched the crowd gather, heard their laughter, saw the mockery on their faces. Who filmed this? She asked quietly. One of the waiters. He posted it online last night around midnight. David scrolled down to show her the caption. This is what happens when rich people forget they're human. Oh no, Lily whispered. Oh yes, David said, but he was almost smiling. Lily, this video has been viewed 20 million times. 20 million. It's everywhere. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. People are furious. He showed her the comments. Thousands and thousands of them. People calling out the restaurant, defending her, sharing their own stories of being homeless or struggling or treated like they didn't matter. Some comments made her tear up. Others made her angry on her own behalf, which was strange because she hadn't let herself feel angry in a long time. The restaurant is getting destroyed, David explained, scrolling through articles on various news sites. They've had to disable their social media because of the backlash. Hundreds of people have canceled reservations. There are protesters outside right now with signs. The owner released an apology this morning, but people aren't buying it. Lily didn't know how to feel. Part of her was embarrassed that millions of people had seen her at her lowest moment, but another part felt strangely validated. All those people who had laughed at her were being held accountable. The world was finally seeing what she had experienced every single day on the streets. The casual cruelty, the way people looked through you like you weren't even there. There's more, David said. He pulled up another article. Someone recognized the Thornwood sticker on your violin case. A journalist reached out to the school asking why one of their students was homeless and begging for food. The school. Lay's been getting calls all morning. They're in full damage control mode. That's why they'll see us today, Lily said, understanding. They don't have a choice. They don't have a choice, David confirmed. But I want you to remember something. You don't need them. Yes, Thornwood is a great school. Yes, it would be good for your career. But your talent doesn't come from them. It comes from you. If they don't take you back, we'll find another way. Okay? Lily nodded. But deep down she wanted to go back. Not because of the prestige or the reputation, but because Thornwood had been her home when she had one. The practice rooms had been her sanctuary. The other students had been the closest thing she'd had to friends. She wanted that back, even if she knew it could never be exactly the same. They drove to Thornwood in silence, Lily watching the familiar streets pass by. The school sat on a hill overlooking the city, a beautiful old building with tall windows and ivy growing up the stone walls. She had loved this place once. Walking through those doors had made her feel like she belonged somewhere. Now, as they pulled into the parking lot, she just felt nervous. David must have sensed it because he reached over and squeezed her shoulder. You've got this. Remember, they need you more than you need them right now. Inside, they were led immediately to the conference room. No waiting. No being told to come back later. The board of directors was already assembled. 5 people in expensive clothes sitting around a polished table. Lily recognized the headmaster, Dr. Peterson, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses who had personally handed her the expulsion letter 3 months ago. Miss Chen, Dr. Peterson said, standing up. He looked uncomfortable. Thank you for coming. And Mr. Torres, we appreciate you arranging this meeting. So formal. So polite. So different from the way they'd treated her when they'd kicked her out. Let's skip the pleasantries, David said, his voice professional but cold. We all know why we're here. You expelled a grieving 15-year-old girl who had just lost her mother. A girl who was on a full scholarship because of her exceptional talent. You didn't try to help her. You didn't connect her with resources. You just kicked her out and moved on with your day. One of the board members, a woman with perfect silver hair, cleared her throat. Mr. Torres, we understand how this looks, but we have policies. Students must provide accurate address information. Miss Chen falsified her records. Because she was homeless and terrified, David shot back. She was trying to hold on to the one stable thing in her life, and instead of showing compassion, you showed her the door. We didn't know the full extent of her situation, Dr. Peterson said weakly. You didn't ask. Lily said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. She had barely spoken since they'd arrived, but now the words came out. You didn't ask what happened to my mom. You didn't ask where I was living. You didn't ask if I needed help. You just saw that I'd lied on a form and decided I didn't deserve to be here anymore. The room was silent. The board members looked at each other uncomfortably. We'd like to offer you reinstatement, Dr. Peterson said finally. Full scholarship reinstated. We can also arrange housing assistance and connect you with counseling services. That's a start, David said. But it's not enough. What do you mean? The silver-haired woman asked. I mean, Lily isn't just another student. She's extraordinarily talented. And after what you put her through, you don't just get to welcome her back like nothing happened. You're going to establish a fund in her mother's name. A fund to help other students who face housing insecurity or family crisis. You're going to make sure no other kid gets thrown out because they're struggling. The board members exchanged glances. They were trapped and they knew it. With the video going viral and public opinion turning against them, they couldn't afford to say no. We can do that, Dr. Peterson said. We can establish the fund. Lily felt tears building but held them back. A fund in her mother's name. Other kids wouldn't have to go through what she went through. Maybe something good could come from all of this after all. There's one more thing, David said. He pulled out his phone and showed them something Lily couldn't see. In 3 weeks, I'm organizing a concert at Whitmore Hall. It's one of the most prestigious venues in the state. Lily is going to perform, and I expect Thornwood Academy to be there, supporting one of their most talented students. Show the world that you stand behind her. Dr. Peterson nodded quickly. Of course, we'll be there. As they left the building, Lily felt like she was floating. She was going back to Thornwood. She was going to perform at Whitmore Hall. Things were actually getting better, but David stopped on the front steps and turned to her, his expression serious. That concert I mentioned? I wasn't bluffing. We're really doing it. And Lily, I need you to understand something. This isn't just about you anymore. Millions of people saw that video. They're rooting for you. They want to see you succeed. but they also need to see it. They need to believe that kindness matters, that talent gets recognized, that good things can happen to good people. The weight of his words settled on her shoulders. She wasn't just playing for herself anymore. She was playing for everyone who had ever been invisible, everyone who had ever been laughed at or dismissed or told they didn't matter. No pressure, right? She said with a weak smile. David laughed. You're going to be amazing. I know it. Now let's get to work. We've got 3 weeks to prepare, and we're going to make this a performance nobody ever forgets. The 3 weeks passed in a blur. Lily practiced 8 hours a day, sometimes more. Her fingers developed new calluses. Her shoulder ached from holding the violin, but she didn't care. Every note had to be perfect. Every phrase had to mean something. This wasn't just a performance. It was a statement. David had arranged everything. Whitmore Hall was one of the most prestigious concert venues in the country. Symphony orchestras performed there, world-famous soloists, and now somehow a 15-year-old girl who had been homeless a month ago. The media attention was overwhelming. News outlets wanted interviews. Magazines wanted her story. Social media exploded every time David posted an update about the concert. Tickets sold out in 47 minutes. People were offering hundreds of dollars for seats on resale sites. Try not to think about all of that, David told her during one of their practice sessions. When you're on that stage, it's just you and the music. Nothing else matters. But Lily couldn't help thinking about it. She knew who would be in the audience. Former classmates from Thornwood who had watched her get expelled. Teachers who had turned away when she needed help. The board members who had kicked her out. And somewhere in that crowd would be people from the restaurant. David had made sure they received tickets. He wanted them to see exactly what they had dismissed. The night before the concert, Lily couldn't sleep. She lay in her new room at Patricia's house, staring at the ceiling. Patricia had told her she could stay as long as she needed. David was working on becoming her legal guardian, but the paperwork took time. For now, this was home. It was good enough. Her phone buzzed. A text from David. You ready for tomorrow? She typed back, I'm terrified. His response came quickly. Good. That means you care. You're going to be incredible. Get some sleep, but sleep wouldn't come. Finally, around 2 a.m, Lily got up and opened her violin case. She played softly, not wanting to wake anyone else in the house. She played the pieces she would perform tomorrow. Vivaldi's Winter. And then her own composition, the one she had been working on for 3 weeks straight. She had titled it, Invisible. It was about being homeless. About being looked through instead of looked at. About hunger and fear and loneliness. But it was also about hope. About the small kindnesses that kept you going. A bakery worker slipping you a free muffin. A librarian pretending not to notice when you fell asleep reading. And ultimately about someone finally seeing you. Really seeing you. The music was raw and honest. It didn't try to be pretty. Some parts were harsh and discordant, reflecting the reality of life on the streets. But it built to something beautiful, something that said even in the darkest moments there was still light, still music, still reasons to keep going. When she finished playing, she found Patricia standing in the doorway in her bathrobe. Sorry, Lily whispered.
Did I wake you?
Don't apologize. Patricia's eyes were wet. That was beautiful. Is that what you're playing tomorrow? Part of it. I'm nervous about the piece I wrote. What if people don't like it? What if they think I'm exploiting my own story? Patricia came and sat on the bed next to her. Lily, your story matters. Not because it's sad. Not because it makes people feel guilty. But because it's true. And there are thousands of kids out there right now going through what you went through. When they hear your music tomorrow, they're going to feel seen. That's worth more than whether some critic likes it or not. The next morning arrived too fast. David picked her up at noon. The concert wasn't until evening, but there were sound checks and rehearsals and a million last-minute details. Lily wore a simple black dress that David had helped her pick out. Nothing too fancy. Nothing that would distract from the music. Whitmore Hall was enormous. The ceiling stretched impossibly high. Red velvet seats filled the space in neat rows. The stage looked huge and empty under the bright lights. Lily's stomach twisted into knots as she walked across it during the sound check. You've played for bigger audiences, David reminded her. Remember, every person in those seats wants you to succeed. They're on your side, but that almost made it worse. What if she let them down? By 6 o'clock, people started arriving. Lily watched from backstage as the hall filled up. She recognized some faces. Dr. Peterson and the Thornwood board sat in the third row. Her former music theory teacher was there, looking uncomfortable. Several of her old classmates scattered throughout the audience, and there, in the back corner, she spotted them. The woman in the red dress from the restaurant. The man who had laughed the loudest. The doorman who had called security on her. David had kept his promise. They were all here. But Lily also saw other faces. Young kids who looked like they might be from group homes or shelters. People in regular clothes who couldn't afford fancy outfits but had scraped together money for tickets anyway. A whole section of seats was filled with people who had been given free tickets through homeless outreach programs. These were her people, the ones who understood. At 7:30, the lights dimmed. Lily stood in the wings, her violin in her hands, her heart pounding so hard she thought everyone could probably hear it. David appeared beside her. "This is it," he said quietly. "You ready?" "No, but I'm going anyway." He smiled. "That's courage. Now get out there and show them what they almost missed." Lily walked onto the stage. The applause was immediate and thunderous. She stood in the spotlight, temporarily blinded by the brightness. When her eyes adjusted, she saw all those faces looking up at her, waiting, believing in her. She raised her violin to her chin and began to play. The Vivaldi piece came first. She had played it 100 times, but never like this. Every note was crisp and clear. The difficult passages that had tripped her up in practice flowed perfectly. She lost herself in the music, forgetting about the audience, forgetting about everything except the conversation between her bow and the strings. When she finished, the applause was deafening, but she didn't stop to acknowledge it. She went straight into her own composition. Invisible, the opening was jarring. Sharp, uncomfortable notes that made people shift in their seats. This was hunger. This was fear. This was sleeping on park benches and running from danger. The music didn't apologize for being difficult to hear. It demanded attention, then it shifted. A softer melody emerged, fragile and uncertain. This was hope trying to survive in impossible circumstances. The theme built slowly, gaining strength. Other melodies wove in and out, representing the people who had helped along the way. The music swelled into something powerful and defiant. This was survival. This was refusing to disappear. The final movement brought it all together. All the harsh parts and the beautiful parts and the broken parts and the healing parts. It was messy and imperfect and completely honest. And it ended not with a grand flourish, but with a simple, quiet note that hung in the air like a question, like a reminder that the story wasn't over, that there were still kids out there who needed to be seen. When the last note faded into silence, the hall was completely still. For a moment, Lily panicked. Had she made a mistake? Had it been too much? Then someone stood up. Then another. Then everyone was on their feet and the applause was like thunder. People were crying. She could see tears streaming down faces throughout the audience. Even the woman in the red dress was wiping her eyes, looking like she wanted to disappear into her seat. Lily looked at David in the wings. He was crying too, but he was smiling so wide it looked like his face might split in half. He gave her a thumbs up. She took her bow and the applause grew even louder. Backstage afterward, there was chaos. Reporters wanting statements. Representatives from music schools offering scholarships. Classical music labels talking about recording contracts. It was overwhelming and exciting and terrifying all at once. But the moment that mattered most came near the end of the night. A young girl, maybe 13, approached Lily nervously. She was thin, wearing clothes that didn't quite fit right. Her eyes had that look, the one Lily recognized immediately. The look of someone who knew what it meant to be hungry, to be scared, to be invisible. "That was amazing," the girl said quietly. "I'm in foster care. I've been in 7 different homes. Sometimes I think about just giving up, you know? But hearing you play, it made me think maybe things could get better. Maybe I could have something good too." Lily felt tears spring to her eyes. She pulled the girl into a hug. "What's your name?" "Jenny. Jenny, do you like music?" The girl nodded. "I've always wanted to learn an instrument, but we can't afford lessons." Lily looked at David, who was standing nearby. He understood immediately and nodded. "How would you like to learn violin?" Lily asked. "I could teach you for free." "And maybe you know other kids who'd want to learn too?" Jenny's face lit up like sunshine breaking through clouds. "Really? You'd do that?" "Really, because someone helped me when I needed it. And now it's my turn to help someone else." Over the next few months, everything changed. The fund established in her mother's name at Thornwood grew with donations from people who had seen the viral video and wanted to help. Lily started teaching music to foster kids and homeless youth, giving free lessons twice a week. She performed at more concerts, and David became her official guardian. The Grand Rose restaurant closed permanently. In its place, a community center opened, offering meals and resources to people experiencing homelessness. Lily went back to Thornwood, but she was different now. She knew what mattered. She knew who she was, and she never forgot where she came from. Years later, people would ask her about that night at Whitmore Hall, about the performance that launched her career, and she would always say the same thing. The applause was nice. The opportunities were amazing. But the best part was looking into that audience and seeing people who finally felt visible. That's what music is supposed to do. It's supposed to remind us we're all human. We all matter. Even when the world tries to tell us we don't. She never played for a piece of bread again, but she never forgot what it felt like to ask. And she spent the rest of her life making sure no one else would have to.